All right, welcome back. Welcome back. 2024 is here. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. Welcome, JL Scott here. Crazy 2023. Just want to thank everybody first off. What a great year on the channel. All the socials, really. Just phenomenal. I totally appreciate everybody who has followed this channel. We have grown this channel so much in 2023. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to 2024. But we're going to talk about some spinnerbaits right now, and you're like going, are you crazy? It's freaking January. And I know a lot of people sleep on the spinnerbait. You know, they consider it to be mostly a spring, summer and fall kind of presentation, and they just put it away. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of people fish spinnerbaits one-dimensionally, okay? They fish them power, fast, right? And a lot of people have had that embedded in their psyche that that's the only way to fish a spinnerbait. And it's just not the case. And so many bites, late fall, early winter into winter, when that water temperature is dropping, you know, citation smallies just getting landed left and right since late summer into early winter in our region on the spinnerbait. It's not something a lot of people talk about, but I'm going to talk about it because it's an actual phenomenal. If you are a river basser, okay, if you're into river bassing, you're into kayak fishing, and you're going into a river and you're talking about 4 feet or less, okay, is predominantly your normal, like, okay, pool rate, as they say, okay? My river was 2.5 feet or less for 8 weeks, okay? 2.5 feet or less. So as that water gets colder and colder and colder, where are those smallmouth going to move to? They're going to move to structure. They're going to move to rock. They're going to move to anything as that water keeps dropping and dropping and dropping, right? And this is even post-feeding up, late fall into early winter. We're now early January 2024, and these smallmouth are still crushing the spinnerbait. Why? A lot of it has to do with just what's happening in the water level area. I do a lot. I'm going to do another video because I had so many questions over the holidays I wasn't able to get to on the NOAA data and the hydrograph. And Jay, how do I read the hydrograph? What is this telling me? Like, how can I use this? Like, why do you use this? Why is this so beneficial? And I can tell you that there's not a single, I do never go out on the water without first running the hydrograph and checking it out and what the water levels are, okay? That is the most important factor if you're river bassing in our region. It's the water level, nothing else. That's the number one factor. If you know your water level, follow, close by the water temperature, but if you know that water level, what's happening to the water level, okay, that is the picture. That's the big picture, okay, of where the smallmouth are going to be in terms of your target areas, okay, and, where they're going to be transitioning to, okay, right? And what do I mean by that? I'm not talking about fall transition. I'm talking about, like, the normal behavior of your smallmouth during water change, rising, falling, okay, water levels, temperature changes. What's going on with them already metabolically in the wintertime? Things are starting to slow down, right? All the bait fish have started to slow down. So if you go out there and you take, your, standard spinnerbait, okay, and you burn it, good luck, okay? Everything is slowed down. But because we fish these spinnerbaits so much and so fast during different times of the year, okay, trying to get that reaction strike, right? Trying to get that where they're really aggressive, right? We sleep on it in the wintertime when the biggest thing that I'm recognizing through the last couple years in the three rivers in my region, okay, is I believe it's the water level and it's the blade. Okay? Two factors of the blades that you're using. And it doesn't matter whether or not you're going with standard color, if you're going that, me, okay? Maybe you're going gold, okay? Maybe you're going gold, bait fish color, perch color. Maybe that's your poison, okay? But maybe you're also going two different color blades. And it's something that I really, really like to do when I'm not sure about what the condition is really going to be in terms of that clarity of that water. Not the water depth, but the clarity. I already know what the water depth is typically going to be. So in my river, if I'm in at 2.5 feet for 8 weeks and I get a rising water event that's going to take my river from 2.5 feet to 5 or 6 feet, I am throwing the spinnerbait all day long, okay, until that bite goes away. Or if I'm going an hour without a bite, okay? Because again, you're throwing that spinnerbait in very targeted areas where there's structure, okay? Because during the wintertime, they're going to relate to anything that's going to provide them safety and security, but it's also going to provide them thermals. So when you've got these weather patterns rolling in, okay, say a cold front rolls in, all right? They're going to relate to the deeper structure. Now, what does deeper structure mean? Okay, if your river's only 3 feet deep, what deeper structure are we talking about, right? They're going to hover to the bottom. They're going to maintain the bottom. They're going to be looking up the whole time, okay? All right, thermals on the bottom or rock, those areas, okay? If there's a down tree, we've got plenty of those in the Potomac River, okay? That come down river and high water events and they just get logged and they stay and then they get put underwater, okay? They'll get up under there, all those things, but they're always looking, they're always up. They're always looking like, okay? But here's the thing, everything is slower to them. Their reaction is slower, their bite is softer, okay? All that stuff in the wintertime because that has to do with their metabolic rate. So don't sleep on some of the baits that you would not think are traditional wintertime baits. Most of these, I guarantee you most channels are going to be talking in the wintertime are going to be talking about a swim bait. They're going to be talking about a deep diving crankbait. Things like that. Okay, I mean, a blade bait. Blade bait is highly effective. But two baits that I find the most effective that nobody really talks about that often, are the spinnerbait. Okay, and the lipless crankbait in wintertime. And here's the reason why. I think it all has to do with the thump. I think it does. Okay, and this is a particular spinnerbait I love. I don't usually use this on the river. This is actually for when I go to the lake. A lot of Virginia lakes and reservoirs have that bait fish. Places like Lake Anna, places like that, Hunting Run, places like that. That in late fall, wintertime, they'll school up, and this is a highly effective bait. So this one tends to be my I usually don't throw that on the river because on the river I'm rolling towards more of those natural colors, okay? Natural colors that are going to easily be recognizable, okay? I tend to use, this is my favorite. You guys have known this. I've talked about this one. I've gone through so many of these because anytime that water gets after a rising water, what comes with the rising water? Mud, okay? So then the color is mute, okay? Those bright chartreuse spinnerbaits, okay? They're not, that chartreuse and that white's not effective in that muddy water. What's effective is the thump, okay? That noise vibration. And that is what a lot of people don't think about when they're thinking about in the wintertime. So a lipless crank and a blade bait are also very effective because they'll get you deeper. To me, they get deeper. Like that blade bait gets deeper. So if I'm going out to like Little Seneca Lake or Jennings Randolph in western Maryland or Lake Brittle over in northern Virginia on the other side of the Potomac, I'm going to take a blade bait with me. I'm going to take the lipless blade. I'm going to take my spinnerbaits, but I'm also going to have that in my back pocket, that blade bait, because it'll get deeper. Okay, and that's what we're talking about. So like if you're only looking at like me on average 3 feet, my river sections I fish all the time are 3 feet. I'm going to use a 3/8, okay, spinnerbait, right? But if you get to like above that, like 5 feet, 6 feet, or 7 feet, you want to go to like half ounce, right? It's kind of work your way up. That's a really good thing. Kind of like in the tandem side, you've got your blades. A lot of people are like, are kind of like tribal about their blades, right? Only willow blades, Colorado, Indiana. I really like these spinnerbaits that are small and compact. Like this is a fish hog. These are fish hog spinnerbaits. But you can kind of see we've got two different blades in there, okay? I like that because I'm not really sure. I may not be sure about how the light situation and the water clarity and the sun. Is it sunny out? Is it overcast out? So having the two different blades kind of covers you a little bit. And I just kind of really like how this looks in the water, especially in my river. Okay, with that, it just creates this like tandem spark in the water. And remember, they're sight feeders, right? We're talking about smallmouth. Okay, so they're sight feeding up. Okay, even in the wintertime, comes right by, but you want to slow it down. You want to make sure you're in that target area for a long period of time. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, Jay, but I've been told that like we don't want them to look at it for too long, right? And I think maybe that may have some like truth to it in the spring and early summer, but I think in the wintertime, they're already slow to react, and I don't think that it's more of a, in terms of recognizing it, that's an unnatural presentation. That's why you want to move it to mirror what's going on in your fishery, okay? And so slow it way down. Keep throwing that spinnerbait deeper, as deep as you can go wherever you're fishing in a lake or a reservoir, near structure and all those things, is like, working it around that structure in that cold water, when that water's below 40 degrees, 42 degrees, you're going to get bit because that's where they're going to be, okay? It's just a matter of, getting it in front of them. I mean, the other thing I really like about spinnerbaits is, what you also find during the wintertime, is working them outside the seam. What does that mean? That means depending on where you position yourself in your river, could be a narrow river, or, it could be as wide as the Susquehanna, okay? Or you could be a lot narrower, like the Allegheny, or the Monocacy, or the Upper Potomac, okay? Or the James, down in like Richmond area, where you've got some flow of current coming, and then you've got stable water, okay? Any break or structure or rock or anything that breaks that current to where you do have stable water adjacent to that area is where you're going to get bit in the wintertime, okay? And here's why. They do not want to exert the energy that it takes for them to maintain their positioning in the seam and in the current, okay? Remember, their metabolic rate is slowing. They've already fed up, okay, for the wintertime. So it's all about conservation. It's all about conserving, okay, the energy that they have. So they're going to be positioned back off. So when you're spinnerbait fishing, depending on how you want to work, your presentation with the current, holding it in the current, or drifting, okay, which is throwing down, right, and coming back and drifting out, back across. That's primarily what I like to do. And so people will say, well, they shouldn't be shallow. Well, they will be shallow in the wintertime, okay? Again, if you're talking about something like the Tennessee River that's deep, okay, or rivers that are like that you're talking about, or Upper Potomac or Upper James, where it's 8, 12 feet deep, it's a different targeted area. It's a different bass, and it's a different presentation that's going to be required. If you're talking about the Piedmont section of the Upper Potomac or the Monocacy, you're only talking about 2.5 to 3 feet. So middle river, 2.5, 3 feet. The banks, shoreline, okay, are coming up from 2.5 to 3 feet, okay, down to the shoreline. They're going to work their way up, okay, in the wintertime, because the water temperature disparity is not that big of a difference, okay? as opposed to deeper water where it could be, okay, water stable in a deeper hole, water is stable, the temperature is stable. There's not like, remember, current in the wintertime is cold. It is colder than the stable areas. Okay? Why is that? You got oxygen, you got all that, it's cold water. They don't want no part of that. Okay? They're going to be adjacent to it and hopefully close enough to where things come by that they want to target. Okay? That they're going to target. All right? And opportunistic feeders in the wintertime. Okay? Very selective about it and how you present it, and you're going to get bigger strikes. That's the other thing that I find with the spinnerbait necessarily. And the probably the one downside of fishing the spinnerbait in the wintertime is you're used to getting, actually it could be an upside as well, depending on the skill level of the angler. A lot of times in the spring and summer or in the fall when that transition triggers and bait fish are all moving around, everything's an aggressive strike. So you could get short strikes, you could get, you could not land your spinnerbait. That's the number one complaint most people tell me why they switched from a spinnerbait to a chatterbait, is they felt like the chatterbait got them more hookups than a spinnerbait. My argument, and I could be wrong, just been my experience, is I used to throw the spinnerbait and run it with my cadence, okay? And I've slowed what considerably down in my old age of how I fish a spinnerbait, okay? And I really learned from jerkbait fishing, I believe, to apply certain principles. Line, the different line I'm using, I use P-line, is my number one go-to fishing line now. It has been now for the last year and a half since switching over. Because of the depth of the number of lines, you can go P-line tactical fluorocarbon. I can use my top water for my jerkbait. Copolymer, they got spin braid for those people who want to throw braid on a Shimano spinning reel. Any of those kinds of things. I just love that, and it's allowed me to do different things in terms of my bait presentations because of the line. A lot of people sleep on the line aspect of their fishing. And in terms of the spinnerbait, I just have slowed down, and I've noticed that the hookups come a lot better, okay? Because a lot of times it's coming this way. Think of it like this: it's coming this way, and you're pulling the bait this way, okay? So that smallmouth is coming, okay, and gonna hit it, and you're pulling it away from it. Okay? You're not driving it to it. All right? And I think that's why people miss a lot of smallmouth that are, even when they're aggressive, is you're pulling it away from them, and then they're kind of like lurching, and you get that strike. Now in the wintertime, you don't get that kind of aggression. So it's more of like a kind of a slow move. Boom. Okay? And I think that's why the hookups are tend to be higher after fall and into winter when you run, especially with rising water. That's the number one time. You can throw that as soon as the water comes down. It's super cold. A cold front moves in. You can throw the spinnerbait. You know where you're going to be targeting those fish because you know where they're going to move to. Okay. And for you, pick your poison in terms of what style of spinnerbait. I mean, that's just one of the areas for me where, it's more or less, what you feel comfortable with, okay? There's no one right answer, I don't believe. And the real reason is when you fish different fisheries, you find these things out. Like, it's not universal. For me, I have found, the shorter, compact spinnerbaits, okay, right, are the most effective for smallmouth for me. Again, but your river system could be different in terms of depth, right? In terms of how cold your river system gets. What's the rising water situation in your river in terms of when you get the rains, right? How wide your river is affects the rising water level, okay? And how quick it's going to rise. If you've got a lot of water going through a narrow area, okay, you're going to get a significant rise. All you have to do is look at that NOAA data and you look at the Upper Potomac, Little Falls, Edwards Ferry, Pointer Rocks, completely different in terms of depth. Okay, every high water event. Edwards Ferry is traditionally normal pool, always deeper. It averages about 5 feet, 6 feet. That's normal throughout the year. Normal. Okay, 6 feet below Seneca Landing, that ain't normal. Okay, 2 feet is normal. All right, and so all that comes into play. Okay, and that's why it's important to be able throughout the year to identify those areas that you know those bass are going to be moving to throughout the year. Okay, it starts in the spring. You're identifying low level, usually lower water levels. You can identify the rock. You can maybe identify where the grass is, all that stuff. Then throughout the late spring and the summer, water can come up. You can get a high water event. Hopefully you don't get any flood stage events. Then a lot of that structure now is submerged for a significant period of time. That becomes the habitat for the bass to move to. Then you get into like late summer, early fall transition. Everything is going on. They're moving from the middle river. They're moving to the bank. They're feeding up. They're moving back to the middle river. And all along, you're making these mental notes of these different areas of structure and rock and pools and all that during different areas. So then when the time comes, come winter time, you're going to know where they are. Okay? Because you're eliminating through the spinnerbait and any kind of bait. Again, if rising water, spinnerbait can also throw a chatterbait. But you're going to cover a lot of water, but you're going to eliminate a lot of water that you already know that they shouldn't be there. Okay? Doesn't mean they won't be. But you can eliminate that initially. And then it gets to go to there if you haven't located them where you believe they should be. And what I think that a lot of people make the mistake is they go to a spot, and if they haven't gotten a bite, they move. They leave it. They don't pick the spot apart. Okay? And in the wintertime, slowing everything down. Remember, you're not talking about going out to that spot and getting 8, 9, 10 bites. You're talking about getting 1 or 2 bites. Okay? And so you've got to slow things down and give them, it's easy to say give them what they want, but put it in front of them, let them recognize, and let them have it be a number of features like the thump. Like if you're going to throw a crankbait in the wintertime, there's really no other reason than to throw a 1 thump or a 1 knock crankbait. They're the most effective in the wintertime because it's that knock. It's the noise, okay? It is, that noise of those blades. Caught myself. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is, okay? And so that and the flash, the noise, all that stuff in the wintertime gets a little bit of their attention, okay? But you can't race it by them, okay? Because that's unnatural. None of the bait fish are like sprinters in January, okay? They're more like cross-country runners, okay? Even the bait fish. Everything's moving slow. Everything is slowed down, okay? But you also got to remember that the resources are also slowly declining. Remember? It's a squeeze, okay? So you got that squeeze from October to December and January, right? Before you get what? When you squeeze something really, really tight, afterward it pops, right? And that's the spring, okay? That's what happens in your fishery in the spring is everything pops, okay? And that's when you get that change. But until then, everything is being squeezed. So there's not the bait fish aren't as plentiful. The grass has certainly died off, okay? Everything is associated with the grass has died off. And so they're going to be opportunistic feeders, okay? And that's why, for me, your water level is everything in the wintertime, and then your clarity, your water clarity, right? And so, again, I'm lean towards the noise and the flash, especially if it's clear water, than I am necessarily, towards, like, the colors. That the colors are as big of a factor in the winter. I don't believe that to be the case. I believe it's more noise and cadence of what you're fishing, and try to that. Now, if you're a lake or reservoir fishing, I think that the brighter colors, for some reason, tend to be more effective than in the river. In the river, again, It's these natural colors, okay, in your river system, shiners, things like that. You can even go, although in the wintertime it's a little bit tough. Usually it works about end of February, early March. If you go to the crawl spinnerbait, not as effective in December and January for me anyway, and I think that's just because the crawl have already gone into their winter haunts, right? And they're not out moving around. And again, the short-term memory for these smallmouth bass and largemouth for that matter is, what they have been seeing. And when you're throwing, a bright red crawl imitator by them, they're like, what's that doing here? Like, that's not natural, okay? So you want to be cognizant of that fact. But I believe that, again, water level, water clarity, okay, the temperature and clarity, okay, but then really the thump, whatever bait you're throwing, the vibration of a lipless crank or even a blade bait, okay, that's going to get bit. Your one knocker crankbait, that's going to get bit, okay? This is just what happens, all right? And you want to make sure that, you've got the spinnerbait with you if you're going out in the wintertime. Because when you target those areas, again, depending on your water depth, okay, they're going to be in that structure area, and you're going to want to get in there, okay? They're not always going to be, especially if they're suspended. After a high water event, they're confused and they're not sure what they're going to be doing. If those smallies aren't on the bottom and you're not jig fishing, okay, and it's a high rising event, they're going to be suspended. They're going to be in the middle of the river. They're going to be suspended, waiting to try and figure out, okay, what the hell is going on? What do I do next? Because the water keeps rising up, okay? And so that's why that's such a perfect time to catch them, okay? Because they're kind of like in the open. Okay, there's also bait fish being moved around because of that high water. Okay, and you can target them. So that's just my take on wintertime spinnerbaits. Don't sleep on it, guys. Do your own research in your own area. Obviously, you want to find out what's going on with your river system using NOAA data. I'm going to do a couple videos on showing exactly how I use the NOAA hydrograph to plan my day out on the river and how it influences the baits that I take with me. And all of that stuff. So you can have a game plan before you get out on the river, okay? You can accomplish so much in setting yourself up for success before you even leave the house, okay? With the resources that are now available, especially with satellite and Google, all this stuff, man. You can set yourself up a lot than just showing up at the dock, showing up at the ramp, not having a clue, and going out there in the wintertime and you're cold, and everything, and you're just trying to get that like one bite, okay? And that's how it is. You want to make sure that you set yourself up the best way to get those one or two bites, okay? And we saw that this month in the Smalley Chaser River Bassin Series. 2 citation smallmouth over 20 inches caught in December. Cold water, okay? And so check that out. That's a new channel, by the way. The Smalley Chaser channel. On YouTube is a new channel for what this video. I'll probably prop this video there too as well. Edit it up and we'll be good to go. All right, guys.